The world of Fallout shows the ending results of capitalism. After a seemingly endless cycle of increasingly booming and busting economies maintained by the powerful elite, with highs, booms, the economy growing and jobs plentiful, and high returns in the market, followed by crashes, busts, in which jobs are lost, investors lose money, and the economy shrinks, and the top 1% remain untouched through it all. The rampant consumerism leaves the world devoid of most natural resources and with a strong desperation to maintain previous ideologies. Unchecked consumerism, imperialism, and authoritarianism cause the world's governments to be so desperate to maintain their control that unleashing nuclear hellfire is preferable to losing power. And with the world left to ruin following the nuclear Armageddon, society breaks down into a place where slavery, mass murder, and human experimentation are but a few of the things that become the norm. Exploitation exists no matter where you go. You can't walk 2 steps into the waste without finding exploitation. Though the free market persists in this world, the free market is dictated rather than the economic class you are born into by the size of your gun. Larger powers vie for control of the scarce resources that remain. Unchecked consumerism, imperialism, and authoritarianism cause the world's governments to be so desperate to maintain their control that unleashing nuclear hellfire is preferable to losing power. And with the world left to ruin following a nuclear Armageddon, society breaks down into a place where slavery, mass murder, and human experimentation are but a few of the things that become the norm. Exploitation exists no matter where you go. You can't walk 2 steps into the waste without finding exploitation, as larger powers vie for control of the scarce resources that remain. Despite this, class divides exist all over the Fallout universe. Whether it's the social caste of Diamond City or the reclusive elites of Tenpenny Tower, these divides and systems show that despite a nuclear Armageddon, little was learned from the world before the bombs. The elites and powerful still find ways to live in their ivory towers, seemingly removed from the chaos. The Enclave is probably the most powerful faction that believes in a powerful elite controlling the world, with plans of eradicating anyone possessing mutations through infecting the waters of the Potomac River with a modified version of the FEV virus, otherwise known as Project Purity. The beliefs held by these elites persist with a holier-than-thou attitude, and their fundamental belief in being superior beings, despite the very existence of the lone wanderer, the chosen one, or the sole survivor proving them incorrect. These elites exist and live by the rules of social Darwinism, a bastardization of the ideas brought forth by Darwin's theory of natural selection, which concluded that living beings compete over resources, and only the most fit for a given region survive. The elites, in this case, think their good fortunes to be the results of evolution, that they are more evolved, or rather, less mutated. The elites believe that they had been given the right to govern and rule due to natural selection, rather than cheap opportunism. This belief was common in America, especially during the cultural zeitgeist of the 1950s. The world of Fallout mimics and parodies the real-life sentiments of America, especially during the Red Scare, a time in which many Americans were paranoid of supposed subversive activities caused by communists. These sentiments are exacerbated by the Cold War finally escalating in 2066 as China invaded Alaska. Despite both sides in the war claiming to be defending, the U.S. still manages an invasion of mainland China. However, American supply lines run thin from fighting a 3-front war with the Chinese, and with finding themselves unable to combat China's stealth technology, America sees itself deal with a rise of mass hysteria from both imagined and actual subversive activities. Making use of the extreme paranoia and hysteria, the U.S. government tightens its control on the people, and even annexes Canada. North America then finds its edge in the war in the form of T-51B power armor, and begins the path to the Great War. With the reclamation of Anchorage, America turns into a de facto dictatorship and moves their manpower either to mainland China to fight, or back home to the U.S. to quell protests and unrest caused by the economic devastation as increased automation replaces many labor jobs. Though suffering from an unreliable narrator to the point of being called divorced from reality by a researcher working on the simulation, much can be learned about the reclamation of Alaska through the DLC Operation Anchorage. Though General Chase alters the simulation to make America look better and China look worse, various holotapes found in-game can help in recreating and explaining the sentiments of the soldiers who died there. Much of the anti-communism within the story exhibits itself in downright xenophobia, like with the story of Lil Yangtze, a Chinese concentration camp created by the United States to house Chinese American citizens, not unlike the Japanese internment camps created during World War II. Officially, camps like Lil Yangtze were created to protect America from Chinese infiltrators. However, it is quickly made clear that they were created in order to make a population easily accessible for experimentation. The bomb collars seen on the Golified survivors of Lil Yangtze were first used here, to keep prisoners trapped inside and to relieve the guards of the stress caused by numerous escape attempts from prisoners. It is then revealed that prisoners' brains were being harvested for use in robo-brain units. This is only one of many horrific acts, and we can only be led to believe one of many sites of such experimentation. Before the Great War, the great powers of the world were becoming increasingly authoritarian. The elite and powerful tried to grasp at more and more power in a desperate attempt to hold on to what they stood to lose with the onset of the Great War. Ironically, even accelerating the war with their constant fighting and refusal to back down. Pre-war America even went so far as to become a de facto dictatorship, turning much of the war effort on itself to squash unrest and protests. Following the war, the various factions in the wasteland maintain an authoritarian boot over the necks of the survivors they claim to protect. Whether the corrupt and stretched thin New California Republic or the downright evil and vicious Kaiser's Legion, the wastelands were full of powerful people desperate to hold on to as much power as they could. The NCR under President Tandy grew substantially, focusing efforts on rebuilding the pre-war infrastructure and restarting technological development. However, while under Aaron Kimball, the NCR became more imperialistic and forced many new tribes and towns to join the NCR, even overextending itself in the process thanks to General Oliver's incompetence and bureaucratic red tape. The Legion, on the other hand, is far more authoritarian, focusing on survival and long-term stability at all costs. They do this by employing tactics of the Roman Empire. Kaiser dedicates his members to a higher ideal, seeking to prevent humanity from fracturing and destroying itself again, believing that only possible through an enforced nationalist, imperialist, totalitarian, and homogenous culture, obliterating the identity of every group it conquers. The Legion can create the stability needed to rebuild from the wreckage of the war. Traders like Dale Barton even prefer to trade in Legion territory, claiming to not need to hire protection or pay extortionate taxes. These outlooks, while serving their purpose in the timeline of Fallout New Vegas, show holes in their logic and raise concerns of their long-term success and stability. The NCR is riddled with corruption and monopolies as rich caravan owners and politicians fight for control and power. The Legion is both hated and feared by most who encounter them, thanks to their cruelty and inhumanity, as well as their common tactic of killing or simulating any faction regardless of whether or not they chose to help the Legion. The Legion even goes so far as to put their own men to death for failure observing old-world technology, or even just to prove a point. The Legion's politics are that of an autocratic monarchy, enforcing strict nationalism and imperialism, believing women to be weak and inferior to men. They even go as far as to keep women as slaves for the Legion. The Legion's imperialism cannot be understated. The Empire of the East demanded to cross the Colorado, purely for the sake of Kaiser's ego. He was willing to throw the entire might of the Legion at the Hoover Dam over some delusional belief that this was his Carthage that must be destroyed at all costs. Despite losing the first battle of Hoover Dam, he refused to change his tactics, refused to learn any lesson, and refused to back down. The Legion was already overextended, having conquered 86 tribes before attempting to take the dam, and there was no way he could hope to maintain supply lines and a tight grasp on that much land, especially with having the entirety of the NCR to attack after taking the dam. The Legion's strategy of pillaging tribes and towns as they continued to conquer wouldn't work when they had already destroyed most of the towns in Nevada by the time they were prepared for the final assault on the dam. The Legion's overextension meant that, in order to take the West, they would have to abandon the East. Their imperial conquest would be for nothing. Rampant consumerism takes a turn for the worse in the Fallout universe. Consumerism is defined by Merriam-Webster as the preoccupation of society with the acquisition of consumer goods. This consumerism is exhibited in the fulfillment of the promises from the World of Tomorrow beliefs held in the 1960s, where hovering house-cleaning bots and laser guns are the norm, and futuristic cars are powered by nuclear fusion engines that look like something out of a concept car commercial. This consumerism eventually led to a drain of resources, ultimately leading to the resource wars of 2052, where the European Commonwealth invaded the Middle East for their oil reserves. These resource wars were primarily chasing after any remaining oil the world had. China managed to secure a final oil reserve in the Pacific Ocean. America had Alaska and later annexed Canada. The European Commonwealth was engulfed in war with the Middle East, while also dealing with quarreling and infighting. This war to maintain the status quo and allow corporations to continue to profit off of mass-produced goods eventually led to the fall of society, because society simply couldn't live without the continuation of this consumerism. The world of Fallout may be fictional, but the lessons brought by this world are relevant to our own. Rampant consumerism leads only to scarcity and desperation. Xenophobia and anti-communism leads only to destruction and ruin. Authoritarianism leads only to unrest and rebellion. The world of Fallout should serve as a warning that if our world doesn't change, then perhaps our 2077 will not be unlike that of Fallout's universe. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, I would like to thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to give it a like. This video is going to be a part of a larger series exploring the political views of various titles. My next video will be covering the first 2 BioShock games, so make sure to subscribe if you want to see that. In the meantime, my name is Juliet, and I'll see you in the next video.